One of the most predictable job interview questions has to be, tell me about yourself. Now that question, tell me about yourself, falls into the icebreaker question type or category. And so therefore, it's likely to be one of the first questions you get when you sit down for that interview, if not the very first question. So it's a great opportunity to get off to a good start and make a good impression. In this video, I want to cover 4 different strategies to help you answer this question, and they're not all good. So we have the salesman, we have the regurgitator, the question questioner, and the rule breaker. My personal favorite, and it might not be what you think. Let's look at the approach that the salesman might take to answer the question, tell me about yourself. Sure, my name is Fred Bloggs and I am brilliant, and let me tell you why. I have excellent leadership skills. I'm someone of a very high level of integrity. I'm professional, I'm flexible, and I'm very sensitive to my customers' needs. I'm a great team player. In fact, my manager recently said he thought I was an excellent team player. And I know that if you hire me, you'll have a fantastic return on your investment. Well, I'm not sure about you, but that doesn't really work for me. That clearly is a pre-rehearsed and scripted sales pitch or elevator pitch. I think that kind of approach doesn't really answer the question of tell me about yourself. And I think that it actually insults the interviewer's intelligence. Remember that you're not trying to win the position in one single answer. There'll be time to share some of your strengths and some of the highlights from your professional background. Trying to win the interview in one sales pitch, I don't think is the right way to go. For me, it misses out on one of the most important goals or objectives that we're trying to achieve, especially early in the interview, and that is to build some rapport, make a connection with the interviewer, and give them a sense of our personality and our communication style. Now, the second approach or strategy to answering the question, tell me about yourself, is to adopt the regurgitator method. Now, the regurgitator will start their answer with something like this. Sure, well, as you can see from my resume, and then proceed to regurgitate their resume line by line. Now, whilst I think that's a better approach than the salesman method, I don't really think it helps the interviewer very much. They've already read your resume. In fact, they've probably highlighted different areas of your resume that they'd like to go into more depth with and ask you more questions about. Regurgitating your resume, I don't think is helpful. In fact, just repeating what they already have read about you, I think is a lost opportunity to get off to a good start. Now, I know that there'll be things in that resume that you also want to highlight to the interviewer. There are things you will want to make sure they know about, things that will present you in a positive light. Again, you don't need to cover all of those things in the very first answer, where the question is quite simple. Hey, tell me a little bit about yourself. So let's move on to the question questioner, who will respond to tell me about yourself by saying, sure, what would you like to know? Put yourself in the interviewer's shoes for a moment. You ask someone a simple question like, hey, tell me about yourself. And they can't answer that. They want you to tell them what they should say. I think that's a really poor approach to answering this question. It might suggest to the interviewer that you haven't prepared properly, even though you must know they're going to ask you that question. It might suggest that you're someone who needs to be prompted, you need to be told what to do, you don't have any initiative, and maybe you're the person who's going to have to be micromanaged every step of the way if you were to fulfill the role. I strongly encourage you to push aside the question questioner approach to really any of the interview questions. You need to show more confidence and more initiative and be ready to provide valuable answers to the questions that come your way. Now, the fourth option or strategy when answering the question, hey, tell me about yourself, is to use the rule breaker approach. Let me explain. Sure, my name's Russell Kempster. I've lived in the area all my life. I'm married with 2 beautiful children, and I love the finance industry, the construction industry, the fitness industry, the medical profession, the education space, or of course, whatever industry the position you're applying for fits into. Now, there might be career advisors and interview coaches who just went into cardiac arrest at the thought that you would share anything personal in a job interview. The general advice from them will be never offer anything personal. Now, I think we really should question that advice. Now, there's no doubt that in most countries, it's either against regulations or even unlawful for an interviewer to try to elicit personal information from a candidate through various questions. Now, obviously you wouldn't volunteer things like your political persuasion, your sexual preference, or your religious beliefs. Anything that might be considered sensitive like that, you should not disclose, and the interviewer is not permitted to ask those sorts of questions. But something innocent like, we've lived in the area all of our lives, or we've recently moved to the city and we love it here, or I'm married with 3 beautiful children. I don't think that does any harm to your chances of a successful interview. In fact, I think quite the opposite. I mean, just think about that from the interviewer's point of view. They're not allowed to ask you personal questions, yet here's a candidate who's giving some personal information openly. I think that's a great way to show that you're an open and honest person, and it would go a long way to building trust with the interviewer. If the interviewer feels they can trust you, that goes a long way to building rapport and making a really good connection. Remember, we're just talking to another human being. Building rapport, making a good connection, I think goes a long way to helping you succeed in your interview. Okay, so far with the rule breaker method, we've introduced ourselves, we've introduced something personal, and we've mentioned that we love the industry. Now we need to move on to the second part of the response to the question, tell me about yourself, and that is to give some professional context. Now think about giving information in a chronological order. So what have you done in the past? What are you doing now? What do you hope to do in the future? So past, present, and future is a simple framework for delivering some information from a professional perspective. So we first think about any relevant training or qualifications that you may have in a related industry. Once you've explained that, let's talk about the work experience that you've had before moving on to what you're currently working on, what your current responsibilities are, or what role you hold at the moment. Now try and identify something in your current work that is significant, something that's a highlight that you could briefly, concisely outline to the interviewer to show what level you're capable of achieving with your work. Now once we've done that, we need to move on to what the future looks like for you. Let's try to link that to the reason you're sitting in that interview. So in other words, you might say something like, look, I really enjoy my current work, but I feel like it's time for me to take it to the next level, which is why I'm really excited about this opportunity with XYZ company. A quick recap. The first part of the rule breaker method is to introduce yourself, offer something personal, tell them that you love the industry. In the second part, you're going to summarize from a professional perspective. Think about the past, the present, and what you're looking for in the future. If at the end of the interview you've been able to build rapport, make a connection with the interviewer, and get to a point where they feel as though they know you, they like you, and they trust you, when the time comes to make a decision, you've put yourself in a really good position. We know that people will make decisions emotionally. Of course, you've got to be the right person. You've got to have the qualifications and the experience. You've got to demonstrate that you can do the job. But if there are 2 or 3 other candidates who have done that as well, but you've made a great connection with the interviewer, they feel as though they know you, like you, and trust you. From an emotional perspective, that may very well influence their decision to choose you as the successful candidate. I'm Russell from Interview Mojo with some tips and techniques to help you level up your interview performance so you can land that dream job. I hope this was helpful. Look forward to chatting with you again soon.